time since I last posted anything, but I've really been itching to make something. So today we'll be making a Sleepie Eepie bear. Here's the sketch I made on how I want it to turn out, but you'll see I took some artistic liberties in the end. This project will be broken down into 3 main parts: creating the model, casting it in silicone, and finally filling it in with resin. As usual, I'll be making my model out of polymer clay, which also goes by the name oven-baked clay if you're not familiar with it. This type of material will stay soft and malleable until you solidify it with some sort of heat source, hence the name oven-baked clay. So here I'm just breaking off a small chunk and putting the rest back into the box. Next, I'll be kneading it between my fingers until it becomes soft and workable. Now the rest of the video is just a lot of eyeballing, so I'll try to narrate what I'm doing as clearly as I can. So following the drawing, we'll be working from the largest piece to the smallest piece. Here I'm rolling out a ball slightly smaller than a pea that we'll use as his head. Then we'll take a piece that's about half to 1/3 the size of the head to use as his body. And now I'm just placing them beside each other to check if I like the sizing. Now from here on out, the rest of the pieces will be really tiny. There'll be 2 tiny ovals for the arms and 2 slightly larger cones for the legs. Going back to the head, we'll attach a ball for his nose and squish that firmly in place. With 2 more tiny circles, we'll attach some ears to either side of his head. I lied, there's one more big piece I forgot to make, and that's the pillow. This piece should be a little bigger than the head and flattened out into a rectangular shape. Now we can go back to the bear, attach his body and all his limbs. The arm closest to the pillow will be placed at an angle as if he was resting his hand under his cheek, and the other arm will be draped over his body in a little hug. At this point, I kept accidentally squishing his ears, so I just decided to remove them altogether and reattach them later. For the leg, I'm attaching the thinner part of the cone to his body and doing the same for the other side as well. This last tiny piece I'm cutting is going to be his tail. After attaching the ears, the bear is complete. Now we can see what he looks like on his pillow. Here I decided to make an indent for his sleepy head to lay on so he won't roll over too much. Here's a final up close of what he looks like before I put him in the oven. Now that Mr. Sleepie has been solidified, we can move on to the next step, which is silicone. But first we'll need to construct a waterproof container to pour the silicone mold into. For this I'll be using a recycled container, a pair of scissors, and some packaging tape. After cutting out a flat piece of plastic, I'll be eyeballing the height of the bear lying down, plus an extra centimeter for the height of the container. Roughly placing the pieces how I want them to be when I cast them, I'll be eyeballing a rectangular border leaving about half a centimeter extra on all sides. With a little bit of tape, I'll close up the shape. And now with a larger piece of packaging tape, I'm going to create the bottom of the container. This time the placement of my models is actually important. Similar to before, we'll place the pieces about half a centimeter apart and center them inside the border, keeping that half centimeter allowance all around. Holding it down firmly and keeping the bottom flat, we'll wrap the sides tightly so there are no gaps. Same with the top and bottom sides. And when everything is secure, here's what it should look like. Now we can get to mixing and pouring the silicone mixture. I'm using the brand Let's Resin, a food scale, a mixing cup, and something to mix with. Oh, I almost forgot, we'll also need a pair of gloves. You should probably follow the instructions on your product, but for the Let's Resin brand, all I needed to do was mix equal parts of A and B. Here I was starting to wonder why the number wasn't changing. And then I lifted up the container and it said 10. If you remember from earlier, when I first put it down empty, it weighed 7 grams. I'm gonna try one more time. And you see this smaller container weighs 2 grams. And now it weighs 3! I give up. So here comes more eyeballing with part B. Hoping the proportions are equal, I'm gonna give it a good mix for about 5 minutes. And when everything's combined, slowly pour into one spot, letting the silicone fill the gaps by itself. Perfect. Perfect. I'll give it 24 hours and check in with you guys once it's all set. So it's actually 2 days later, and thankfully the eyeballing was alright because it solidified beautifully. Now we can remove the tape, pop them out of the container we made, and after removing the polymer clay models, carefully trim the edges so it'll be easier to work with when we fill it in with resin. Resin time! I wanted to continue the pink theme on my keyboard, so I'm using the escape key as a color reference. We'll need UV resin, a mixing container and palette, some dotting tools, our keycap mold, and of course a UV lamp. I'll begin by first creating the base of our keycap. To do this, I'm mixing a baby pink with some red and white acrylic paint into enough UV resin to fill a keycap mold. The color is good, but I wanted the cap to be more opaque, so I mixed in some more paint until I was satisfied with the opacity. Now for something that's thicker, around like half a centimeter or so, you would need to work in layers for the UV resin to cure properly. So that's what I'm doing here. And also make sure to get the edges to prevent air bubbles from forming. I added a little bit more and cured it under my lamp for at least 60 seconds. This is the second layer I'm filling. And before I fill it up all the way, I'll create the cross section. I lost the rest of the footage making the base, but all I did was fill another layer almost to the top, place the cross section face down, and a little bit of overflow is alright. But once it was centered, I cured it in my lamp for 2 minutes this time just to make sure everything was nice and solid. If yours is still squishy, I would recommend placing it in the UV lamp for even longer than that. Now back to Mr. Sleepie Bear. I don't have a brown, so I made it by combining all 3 primary colors plus a little bit of white. Ta-da! For this part, I'm pre-filling all the small gaps that will easily collect air bubbles, like the ears, nose, tail, and arms. And then I'll go in with the bigger dotting tool to fill in the rest of the volume. Mixing a white for the pillow and carrying them both under the light for about a minute. Now time to see how they turned out. The pillow came out fine, but yikes, the tail has a huge bubble in it. Not to worry though, cause that's a pretty easy fill. And now it's time to trim off the excess and sand the sides smooth. Using the UV resin as glue, we'll add a little bit to the pillow and place the bear on top to snuggle with it. Now we solidify it under the lamp. I could have left him like this, but it felt really plain and he looked really stiff and uncomfortable on that hard surface. So I took the artistic liberties to interpret what he was dreaming instead and make that his landscape. Keeping with the pink theme, I revisited one of my old projects with the strawberry keycaps and played around with the positioning until I figured out something I liked. Mixing a translucent red glaze will spread that over the top of the keycap and create some drip effects along the sides. This will act as the glue that will secure Mr. Sleepie, Eepie, and the strawberries to the top of our keycap. Cure that for another minute, and voila! This is the final result. So now he's dreaming of strawberries on top of a strawberry pudding. I love the glazed and juicy effect in contrast with the matte surface of the keycap. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found inspiration from this video or even just enjoyed watching the process. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing to see more of my projects. See you next time. Bye!